Hello, very good afternoon to those of you who are tuning in live and also those of you who might be watching this as a recording. I'm Simon Tupman. Welcome to the July 2024 edition of Law Chat, and apologies for my absence last month. I had aimed to do a law chat from Italy while I was on holiday, but owing to connectivity problems, I'm afraid that it was postponed. So we will reorganize that one for a little later in the year. As many of you know, Law Chat is brought to you in conjunction with Moore Markhams, chartered accountants and business advisors, specializing in financial services for the legal profession. And I'm delighted to have the director and chairman of Moore Markhams, Sam Bassett, with us today. Hi, Sam. Welcome to Law Chat again.
Hi, Simon. Great to be with you.
Pleasure. Thanks for coming on. And today, it's probably timely that you're on today because only just a few weeks ago, you concluded your survey, which was carried out in partnership with ALPMA, the New Zealand National Legal Practitioners Financial Performance Benchmarking Survey. And I know that you would like to focus on some of the key findings from that report today.
Yes, that's right, Simon. I have for many years done a every second year survey small to medium-sized Auckland legal firms. But this year, I partnered with ALPMA, and IT Simply was the other sponsor of the survey, and that has meant that it's a nationwide survey, and we got 63 participants from across New Zealand, uh, two-thirds from the North Island and one-third from the South Island. But I was quite happy with that. 20 of the 63 are firms based in Auckland, 19 firms in other North Island centres, three of them in Wellington, 13 firms in Christchurch, and eight based in other South Island areas. So, look, I felt it actually had quite a good representative sample of small to medium sized legal firms across the country.
And I guess with all of these, surveys that we do from time to time, they're carried out in the hope that they might yield some fresh insights or at least some up-to-date information. Were there any surprises in this survey for you?
Yes, one of the key takeouts for me was that ALPMA had not done a financial benchmarking survey in New Zealand since 2017, so 6 years ago. They've been doing them in Australia, but in a way they hadn't done one since 17. And it was quite interesting to go back to that pre-COVID and to have that piece of time and to see how the results that I picked up in this year's survey compared. And one of the big takeouts for me was the increase in wage cost. And that's not just the dollar increase, but the increase in wage cost as a percentage of fees. And so while partner income has increased, so the partner income in the top now, you're not comparing, you must remember, with benchmarking the exact same 10 firms in 2017 to 2024, but it still gives you a flavour of what's been going on in the industry. And the top 10 firms reported average partner income of 635,000 in the 17 survey, and that has succeeded in increasing in this survey for the top 10 firms to 760,000. But the real interesting thing that is that wage costs have increased so much. So while partner incomes are up, they're not up nearly as much as actual fee earners' incomes or salaried people's incomes are up. So in the 2017 survey, the fees, the wage costs were 25% were fee earners and 11% non-fee earners, and that has jumped quite considerably. The top five most profitable firms in this year's survey now have wage costs of 42%, up from 33% 6 years ago. So there was and it's across the country, and it was across all tiers of firms that submitted. And I think we anecdotally know this a bit from the profession that we've all known that wage costs have been surging. That has been passed on to clients through higher charge rates and higher costs for specific pieces of work. But there has been a squeeze going on within firms where the higher wage costs, while there has been success in recovering them, they have not entirely been recovered through fees. So there has been a squeeze on law firm profit margins across NZ.
Now, I know you did an analysis also of various other overheads that appear in your report, a copy of which, by the way, is available from you. Is that right to say?
Yes, that's right. If anyone wants it, if they can just they flick me an email, I will flick you a copy of the report.
And that address again is?
Sam.Bassett, Bassett, at Markhams, markhams.co.nz.
Excellent, thank you. One statistic I saw in that report was, I think there was an apparent increase in IT and telecommunications expenditure.
Yes, that's right. So that's up. That's up, and there's reasons for that. The mix of what law firms are spending their money on is changing a little bit with overheads, and so IT and telecommunications is up. I think quite a bit of that is the software monthly subscription costs that firms are facing. But then some of the traditional costs that we used to have of printing and stationery and some of those costs are down. So there is a mix. I mean, I must say, with some of my consulting work with firms, I still treat IT costs as good costs generally. I mean, in fact, really, when you're looking at a firm's P&L, a law firm's P&L, if they're not spending sufficient on IT cost, then that's a giveaway to me of other issues that need to be addressed.
Right. Another thing that you touched on in your report was the use of non-equity partners in firms. Have you formed or drawn any conclusion from your research on how successful firms are using or adopting non-equity partners?
Oh, you've got me there, Simon. Whereabouts is that in my report? It has been very successful. Yes, it's been a very successful strategy for small to medium-sized firms to have non-equity partners, and that's certainly assisted with smaller firms retaining senior people with the firm and helping to drive equity partner income. And that is still a trend. There is, there are a lot of non-equity partners out there, and the other one is, but having said that, what is slipping in more is the concept of everyone being an equity partner, just at a different points level. And I have certainly switched with some of my consulting to be quite supportive of that trend, because there's nothing like having new partners coming onto the balance sheet and actually being real partners rather than salaried partners as early as possible. And then it's really just working through with the firm an appropriate point system and lockstep type system with parameters around that to bring new partners through. But with some of the firms I've been working with, that's hugely successful. There's nothing like a partner actually proportionally contributing a half a current account requirement for funding of the balance sheet, and then actually thinking like a partner regarding debt collection, WIP management, and then all those other things that those are the financial things I'm focusing on, but then along with the other things that they need to do as new leaders in their firms.
I think you made reference to, and I hope I don't catch you out on this one, but I think you made reference to Lockstep being more engaged in larger firms than it is in smaller firms.
Yes, traditionally, that has been the case. Larger, well, I think that might be what I'm alluding to. I mean, the larger firms now are doing that point system generally of bringing, so they have quite a more sophisticated, dare I say it, system for bringing new partners through. So that the large, big six law firms will really have often as many as 7 different rungs on the ladder in terms of remuneration. And then we'll have quite a system for determining which tier you are on, both financial and non-financial.
Yeah. Just a point of order too. Would you be happy to take any questions if anyone tuning in live might like to flick you something? And if you are listening to this live, just go to the Q&A button, and I'm sure we can get a question through to Sam this afternoon. Knowing that you have a very keen interest also in succession in law firms, I was interested to see a statistic there that came out in the report. I think you said that 83% of firms that were surveyed still have no retirement age. Now, this is interesting too, because only just a few months ago, I was over in Australia with a firm, and I was inquiring about whether they had a retirement age. They said, no, we don't here in Australia because it's illegal, which I was unaware of. I'm assuming that it's not illegal in New Zealand, but I think in the past you've said, and on previous law chats, that maybe 65 is a sort of preferred kind of retirement age. Have your views changed about that?
No, I think that it needs to be 65 or, well, look, take your pick. I mean, some firms, I was, our Australian members were over in the Perth firm in our grouping, were telling me that 61 is their magical age for coming out of equity. So, and that's, and I would encourage earlier rather than later. And so I still subscribe to 65. I think it is really important because for small to medium sized firms, there are only so many equity slots in the firm. And it's very important to be able to free up those equity slots. And there's no reason that the senior partners are then route marched out of the firm and have no further involvement. Of course they do, but they can have an involvement at a consultancy level and at a non-equity level within the firm. And that time and time again, I see is actually to the benefit of the firm. And it's that mixing that you get in small legal firms where shareholder interests or owner interests are starting to get confused with overall firm interests.
Yes.
And I'm staggered. Maybe it's a bit like the plumber's tap, but it is quite enlightening that for lawyers, for goodness sake, 83% of the 63 participants don't have a set retirement age in their partnership agreement. So
Yeah.
I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
And so I would strongly recommend firms adopt a retirement age, and sometimes there has to be a grandfathering out for a special exception or something because, depending on the ages of who's there if you don't have one.
Yeah.
But you need to have one because it pays. We've done that in our firm, and it was done many years ago. So all the partners around our table have known what the retirement age is for 20 years. It's there, and so there's no excuses. Everyone can plan accordingly.
Understood.
And it is very important because partner renewal is really important, particularly in this age with AI coming and new ways of doing things and utilizing technology in firms. And frankly, with AI coming, one of the things that is going to be quite confronting is that it's not firms are going to be able to run a 6-partner firm currently is going to perhaps be able to run with 3 or 4 partners. It's not just at the lower levels of the organization, it's going to be right through the organization where a firm that might currently be 40 people in total with 6 equity partners might actually, the new firm in 10 years' time might well be 3 or 4 partners and another 7 or 8 staff solicitors utilising IT and a couple of assistants with an IT background, and that will be that 40-person legal organisation in the future. It's going to be quite confronting.
It sounds it. Yes, maybe the numbers are going to go down in the future, even though there's no shortage of, in terms of the supply of people wanting to pursue a career in this business. While you've been talking, Sam, I've got some listeners have got some questions for you. So if you can take them, I've got a couple from Andy, but I'll just put the first one. Sam, what do you see regarding formulas for working capital contributions by partners? In other words, debtors' WIP times.
Now, we did cover that in our survey. So the best practice for debtors is 45 days. So you can take the GST off your debtors amount at the end of the month and then divide it by 365 days in the year. You get a number of days that you divide the turnover by the debtors by the turnover times 365. It's a formula you do, and I like to talk to that, to debtor days. And 45 days or a month and a half of billings tied up in accounts receivable is a best practice. And if you can get it down, look, 30 is even better, but that's hard to achieve, I find. It tends to, but it can quickly grow from 40, 45 days, and that is a real problem.
Yeah.
Ideally, it should be 40 days or under for accounts receivable. And then your next one is work in progress, and that should be definitely no more than 30 days, hopefully less. Because even then, taking those two figures, you then have a month of work in progress and a bit over a month or two for the money to be collected in. So you've already got a cash cycle in the legal business of over 2 months. So from the moment that a staff solicitor or a partner picks up the work and starts doing the work, there's then a lag of over 2 months before there's cash in the bank, and that has to be funded. And there are plenty of firms where that starts to stretch out and out, so that there's 4 months of funding of the organisation that's required by the equity, either the equity partners or the bank. And that is an important statistic. It's interesting that the more profitable firms are also the firms that are more successful at being able to reduce their lockup in work in progress and accounts receivable.
So cash is king, obviously, still these days. You probably answer Andy's second question. He was not just asking about best practice in terms of law firm debtor days, but he was also asking what the industry average is. Do you know the answer to that? Or does your survey give an average score?
Well, the average lockup across the 63 firms in the survey was 2.5 months. So right. That I was talking about it in days, but that's about what I was referring to. So, but the range was quite significant. The range was from half a month to 6 months.
Yeah,
and that is an issue. So another one that I think is an issue for firms is being able to fund growth, because that's on that point. And one thing that I went to Harvard Business School in May and went to an executive leadership course for a week, which I hugely enjoyed. And one of the takeouts I got from there, it was a course on leadership and professional service firms. But it was interesting that a number of the participants, their firms in America and also in some of the firms in Europe, private equity is starting to come in to help fund those firms. The American firm, there might be a private equity that owns 55% of the firm's balance sheet, and then the partners own the other 45%. Now, what private equity does, of course, is it provides working capital for growth. And you then have a private equity partner sitting around the table, which can lead to a lot more discipline about all of these financial matters, and so the firms and the evidence, certainly the evidence globally, is that firms that take on that go down that track of having an element of private equity ownership, they do tend to grow faster than firms that don't, and that's because, one is because they've got the funds in the door, the funding on the balance sheet to support acquisition and growth.
Yeah, not allowed here yet, but as part of the government review, it was one of the recommendations, I believe, last year about the way in which the legal services industry in New Zealand might be reformed. So it's watch this space at the moment as far as that's concerned. But certainly, I think Europe and North America are certainly more open to that, and that's obviously an important source of capital for firms going forward. The third question for you. Simon in the Waikato here says, do you see goodwill still being paid when joining smaller firms?
Yes, I do. But my caveat on that is goodwill is a function to increase profitability you're buying. So most definitely, if you're joining a small firm and you're the partner and it's a retirement situation, and you don't lockstep with goodwill, but you get full profit share from day one, but you pay goodwill. And if you are entering a firm where you're going to be earning $500,000 a year income instead of the salary that you're on as a senior staff solicitor, then that difference has value, and goodwill should usually be paid and is able to be paid. But it is a function of profitability. Goodwill should not be paid if there is only a very marginal difference between what you're earning as a staff salary and what an equity partnership interest will provide you.
Good. I hope that answers Simon's question. We've got another question that's just popped in here from Alistair over in Australia. Talking of growth, he says, did you measure the percentage of turnover invested in marketing and business development? The Australian figure is 1.9%. Staff training is a paltry 0.4%, and people are frustrated that they cannot attract and retain good staff.
Let's have a look. I think there is. We have here 1.32% is marketing and promotion in the survey.
Right.
So, what was the Australian figure?
Alistair tells me it's 1.9.
Sounds 1.9. Okay. So the New Zealand survey is 1.32.
Yeah.
Rent is my mantra with small to medium-sized firms, even central city firms in Auckland. It's all relevant. It's all relative because it's a percentage of turnover. You should be able to have your rent at no more than 5 or 6% of turnover. And the survey confirms that, actually. The 6% that came in at the average amount spent on occupancy cost of small legal firms was 6%.
Yeah. Can I just bring you back to Alistair's second point there? It was about staff training. Did you cover anything about what firms are paying to train staff?
No, I don't believe we did.
Okay. All right. Another one from Cameron here. Have you seen any key indicators of success in the approaches firms have taken when introducing a non-salary partner tier?
Yes, and the firms that I have been working with that have done that, generally it is successful, but it's not your old seniority system or your lockstepping system. It's working it through and saying, right, we want to offer you a 0.5 equity partnership, and that will increase to a 0.65 equity partnership automatically. But then we've got to assess how this is tracking in terms of your performance to the average firm performance, etc., etc. So it's not an automatic lockstep up to full parity partnership, but it does work well because it succeeds in locking people in and gets them on the balance sheet and assists with succession.
Thank you. I want to just also draw your attention to something that was in the report, and that was the extent to which strategic planning is being carried out in the firms that you surveyed. And what was interesting for me anyway was that there was quite a disparity between the large firms and the small firms. I think the statistic I read was that 83% of the large firms have a strategic plan in place, or at least a strategic planning process. Whereas at the other end of the scale, only 37% of small firms were doing any form of strategic planning. Did that surprise you?
No, I have to say, because of the small firms that I work with, Simon.
Yeah.
But it is telling. I mean, and I think that's where some of the work that you do is just so helpful. It is really important. I mean, the firm that I've been a part of, it's a small firm, but we're a group of networked individual small firms across New Zealand, and we catch up twice a year. And generally, our firms, for their size, when we benchmark in our industry, perform better than some of the other firms. And I firmly believe some of that is because we are part of a larger organisation and benchmark together and look at what others are doing. And it forces you a couple of times a year to get out of the office and go to a conference and sit around with your fellow directors and talk about the business and get yourself out of the business. And, just at a fundamental level, I think that's been quite helpful.
Yeah.
So I really would encourage, small firms need to, in their own way, work out a strategy where they are going to set aside a few days a year, certainly three full days a year, where they are going to spend time with someone like yourself, Simon, working on their business.
Well, maybe one of those days could be at the Future Firm Forum, which is coming up again. So here's a bit of a plug for it. On the 18th of October, it's the function that I've been organising, and I think this is year 16 now. Sam, I know you've been involved with the forum for a number of years, and you've been a regular attender. You're coming again this year, which is good to see. So an opportunity for those of you who do want to catch up with Sam, and to also to learn from some very interesting speakers this year, including Nigel Haddon, who's coming out from the UK to talk about how, in his view, pricing is probably the biggest lever that firms have when it comes to increasing profitability, at least based on his experience over in the UK. So I think it'll be useful for all attendees to get some overseas insights on that particular occasion. So futurefirmforum.com if you want to know more about that on the 18th of October at the Rees in Queenstown. Before we wrap up, Sam, are there any sort of recommendations or key takeaways that you have you'd like to make or share before we wrap up?
Oh, I think the benchmarking exercise is important, but I don't, and financials are important. But one of the big trends I am picking up is that you have to do quite clever management in small to medium sized firms now, and some of the traditional setting of budgets, measuring productive hours, timesheets, and things. It's a little broken, Simon. Frankly, I mean, you have to actually use some clever team management strategies and not focus solely on the dollars. So while the benchmarking is very important, when you lift the hood on some of the firms that are doing well, it's not. I don't want people to take their takeout from my discussion today. There's some of those firms, the dollars are following, doing the right leadership things with a dynamic team and utilizing IT well, being responsive with clients, making the right decisions all the time, and the dollars do follow.
Yeah.
So That's I suppose what I wanted to end on, and I'm hugely looking forward to the forum in Queenstown, as I always do, and it's a nice approachable thing. You can turn up the night before on the Thursday night, have your day conferring Friday, dinner with everyone Friday night, and home Saturday morning, and it's or whatever you want to do, and or spend the rest of the weekend in beautiful Queenstown. But it's a real goodie, Simon.
No, I look forward to seeing you there. That's it for today, folks. That's been half an hour. Sam Bassett, thank you very much for joining us today. If you want a copy of Sam's report from the survey, do send Sam an email, drop him a line, and I'm sure he'll be happy to send you that in PDF format. Lots of food for thought there. Sam, thanks for joining us, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. Been a very interactive session, much appreciated, and I'll look forward to coming back next month with another edition of Law Chat. But until then, have a safe month, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again. Sam, all the best. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks so much. Bye,
Bye-bye.
Simon.
Bye-bye.